Do we have something? Great. Sorry I'm late. I was in another meeting, and it's very unusual for meetings to start 10 minutes before the hour.
Yeah.
So
I don't know. I have to figure out why Carl does this, I think, because I did not back to back or something. But here we are.
Yeah, good.
I think the primary purpose of this meeting is for you guys to meet and talk. I'm happy to be here. I'll hang out a little bit, but maybe when you get into the flow, I have actually friends visiting from Madrid, so maybe I'll drop out part way. But yeah, I'm really happy to be here. It seems like every day now I'm talking to one more new person designing a fund. So I think it's starting to become a trend. And yeah, really excited for you to meet to each other.
amazing. Thanks, Victor, and nice to meet you, Clement. Where are you based?
So I'm based in Mexico City. Yeah.
Oh, nice. Nice. Yeah, I'm currently in France. I'm spending most of my time in Ibiza, Spain.
Okay, nice.
Yeah.
Good place to be, I think.
Yeah, it is for Europe. It's definitely one of the better places at the moment. Yeah, yeah. I mean, France isn't bad either. It's the south of France, here in the mountains in the Pyrenees, where I bought this place. My kids live here, but I've been going through a divorce, so it's like a permaculture, self-sufficient sort of farm.
Okay.
But as we're going through the divorce, I chose to be elsewhere, and we'll see how it evolves. But this is the place where we care for the children. Yeah.
Yeah. Okay. But I hope that's okay with the divorce and you're fine.
Thank you. Yeah, no, it's been going on for a while, and I think we're doing a really conscious uncoupling. So it's a very healing process, and yeah, a lot of personal growth in that as well.
Okay.
It's funny because it's always like hard when somebody says I'm going through a divorce and this and that. But I learned after the while, I'm like, good for you. Because if you've made a decision,
Exactly.
it must be the right decision for you, and all I can do is support you. Good on you.
Exactly.
True.
Yeah. So yeah, very very interested to learn more about what you're doing. Victor came back, I think, from the meeting with you, and it's like he felt like he was having a mirror image kind of a colleague with me, and so yeah, very curious. From what perspective you're looking at starting a fund, and yeah, how you've come to building a fund. Have you done that before? What's your background? And happy to share them from my perspective as well.
Yeah, so happy to do a quick intro. So I'm French, studied in France, engineering, industrial engineering, and then left France directly after school. Went to Asia for about 4 years in different industries. Then started my first company in Singapore. That was a very similar app than Vivino. We almost actually sold it to Vivino, but the CEO got ejected when we were discussing the deal, so the deal didn't happen. But then that kind of showed me the difficulty of entrepreneurship. And while I was also transitioning to impact, to a more sustainable lifestyle and so on the personal level, I wanted to be a bit more involved also on the work level into those actions. But realize that if we start impactful companies, but 9 out of 10 are actually dying, then we need to fix that first. And so discover the model of a startup studio. So in 2018, I started a startup studio, a venture studio, dedicated to circular economy and sustainable consumption. And so I led this venture studio for about 4 years. During the time I was leading it, we raised 1.5 million and we grow the portfolio up to 12 million in valuation. We even did one small exit. And after that, we had some conflict with my co-founder, and so I kind of stopped leading it. And that was the opportunity for me to kind of rethink of the model. One, and mainly because of the fact that I started the venture studio with this idea of we need to reinvent entrepreneurship. And within entrepreneurship, I think one thing that I failed on was reinventing the role of the entrepreneur. And my objective with the startup studio was to really create a mutualization of interest between entrepreneurs. And what I did was actually I did it for the first few entrepreneurs that I invited in the studio, but then the studio was creating startup, but we were not inviting the entrepreneurs in the studio itself. We were inviting them into their startup. So we were kind of replicating the model of a small early stage VC fund. And so that's where I kind of was not really aligned with that anymore. And so 2-3 years ago, I started SCOBY Collective, which is an acceleration studio because we have ID internally, or we accelerate ideas of entrepreneurs who have already started. And instead of having a core team, we have a collective of experts. We staff into project based on the need. And so we have been experimenting also investing shares or investing time into companies, but mutualizing all the experts into the investment we make. So that means all the experts are actually owner of SCOBY Collective, and SCOBY Collective become owner of the portfolio step by step. And each of the experts will invest their time into the startup we accelerate. We have also been doing some consulting, like leveraging the same collective to do consulting work for certain startup, but that's not really the core of SCOBY. But what I realized kind of end of the year 2024 was I changed in terms of vision. Initial vision was to really create a big community fund, create, scale SCOBY to mutualize all the experts, mutualize also entrepreneurs, and bring also investors, and do something very global on 8 vertical, and so something very big. And I realized that my vision was actually changing towards more facilitating community fund to exist. And so very similar structure than SCOBY Collective, but on different vertical, on the different geography, and so on and so on. And so instead of creating one big element, was to create like multiple, either by vertical or by geography, by vertical, small vehicle that are steward owned, and then can live their life autonomously, independently than the collective itself. And the collective can serve the beginning, can serve or assist at some point by providing the resources and so on, but not really owning the entire group of ecosystem holding or community fund. And so recently, beginning of this year, so I've been very active in the steward ownership community and teal organization community because I kind of created SCOBY with this vision of steward-owned company and self-organizing, self-management, evolutionary purpose, and wellness. But beginning of this year, I was really putting time and effort into building this kind of framework for community fund. I have actually almost I'm helping a client potentially. I'm actually about to sign the contract to become like an operating partner for a fund that I will facilitate in the seaweed space. And I was also discussing with Susan, who introduced me to Victor. She's based in New Zealand. We connected through the community of Purpose Foundation and stewardship. on this idea of community fund and so on. We are also both very aligned in terms of skill organization and so on. Of why not creating a community fund of those ecosystem builders, because ecosystem builders like us, we are very much building the same. We have probably a very similar vision of mutualization, and so we are probably the early adopters of this type of model, because we are a true believer in those models. And so why not mutualizing effort within this community of ecosystem builders? Also because we have all started building ecosystems, but from different point of view. I like your diamond face kind of image in your document, because we are all kind of selling a vision like 5 years, 10 years, where the ecosystem is completely built. It will be super powerful and so on and so on. But what I feel is like we could already have this vision achieved tomorrow if we combine the different effort that we have started. And for example, having physical event like the gathering, having like all the different kind of piece of the puzzle combine, and mutualization of interest into this community fund of ecosystem builder in a way.
Mm-hmm.
So yeah, so that's the long kind of version of it, but thanks for your patience.
Thank you. Yeah, that's really interesting. I guess the question that I have is, I heard mutualization on the level of experts, as well as proposed on the level of these ecosystem builders and those that have already seen the future. Have you also, and you mentioned that when you did the first, your first venture studio, you did have mutualization of the entrepreneurs, at least all having an interest in the success of the fund itself. Have you also worked towards getting multiple entrepreneurs to work together towards a common goal as well?
So that's I said the evolution of the model of SCOBY Collective into the community fund model that I'm kind of proposing for this ecosystem, like future of collaboration community fund, is to start by mutualizing entrepreneurs, then plug experts and plug investors, but start with the entrepreneurs. Yeah.
And so what does it mean to you to say to mutualize the entrepreneurs?
So mutualize the entrepreneurs, for me, it's starting by just an equity swap into the holding company of different entrepreneurs who will put 5, 10, 20% of their company, of the shares they own in their company, into the community fund, and will have ownership in the community fund. So it's kind of an exit to the community type of model, where you start to build a portfolio first, portfolio that makes sense. You bring those entrepreneurs, the founding members, I call them, as kind of steward of the community fund. So you have the best people within this sector or within this ecosystem that are actually stewarding the fund. You already have kind of the ideal portfolio. I mean, a small portfolio, but a very kind of very kind of interesting portfolio. And then from there, you bring fund that actually can be funneled in the actual portfolio, plus used to actually do more acquisition or investment within the same sector.
Right. And so, okay, so this is an interesting idea. So you get essentially the existing entrepreneurs to kickstart the fund even prior to there necessarily being money, But essentially, they just put part of their equity into the fund, and so now you already have a portfolio, even though no money went in, but all the stewards of the fund are the people that put in the equity, and now you also have that brain power essentially there for collective decision making, and so it's like you win on two levels. And I guess my original question where I was going with this is kind of asking how are, besides this financial gain, which I loved, how are the entrepreneurs interrelated, or how are their efforts or their startups interrelated? Do they share, a common vision? Are they interrelated? Are they interdependent in some way?
Yeah. So there is an interest on. So there is two ways of doing the equity swap. One is the entrepreneur himself who do the equity swap, and so he only himself has an interest in the fund. But the other version is that the company itself acquires some equity in the fund in exchange of the equity of the startup, and so that creates a common interest. The portfolio has an interest in the portfolio, and that creates a loop of interest within each startup of the portfolio, and that also solves the problem of if a company go bankrupt, then it balance kind of we lose one portfolio company, but we lose also one shareholder. And so that balance a bit the valuation of the portfolio and so on.
You know what, guys? I think it sounds like you're already deep in geek out mode. And this is, I have friends visiting here from Madrid, and this is not my area of expertise. So is it okay if I leave you to continue? Father,
Yeah, yeah.
Definitely. Thanks, Victor.
and yeah, I mean, have a good conversation. Let's hang out in Coherence. Maybe this conversation might actually be worth posting as it is, because it seems like you guys are going deep. And yeah, hit the ground running. I love it.
Will do.
Thank
Thanks,
you,
Victor.
Victor.
Okay, so let me then return the favor and share a little bit about where I'm coming from. So then you might also kind of better able to position the questions, and there might be a way for these two ideas, two worlds to kind of collide and create a baby or something like that. So my background is mostly as an entrepreneur. And I've been in the software space for a really long time. And in 2010, I started a company called Cloud9 IDE, raised capital in Silicon Valley from Excel, Atlassian, Salesforce, a bunch of others, Balderton in the UK, and ultimately sold that to Amazon. And so I spent a couple of years there as well, seeing big tech from the inside. And from 2017, I really started becoming interested in impact. I sold in 2016 and became really interested kind of in the topic of sovereignty specifically, believing that the natural state of man is community. And if we have sovereignty, the relationality between people and with all other species on this planet are something that are front and center in our consciousness. But there are these games that are being played that are essentially preventing us from doing that. So how can we change those games? That's the question, and sovereignty to play these other games, to have the freedom to really bring those things back front and center has been part of my research over the past 8 years. I looked at digital sovereignty, food sovereignty, economic sovereignty, and sovereignty of the workplace. So the latter one we share in terms of self-governing, self-steering organizations, but also looked at mutual credit systems and ran a pilot in Bali, scalable regenerative agriculture in Costa Rica, and then with memory we focused on digital sovereignty, especially in this day and age. That seems to be a very, very important one to get people to make decisions, based on information they can trust, and have relationships that they can trust from in the digital realm, and have AI that they can trust as well. So it's a huge space in itself. After many years of these pilots and so on, and having some time to reflect earlier last year, I realized that it's money that determines the outcomes of the games. And so if we think about building these natural games instead of Molochian games, we need to have a different way for money to flow in. And so what's a different game than the venture capital, even the impact investment game, really, that's being played? Because ultimately, when success is measured by maximizing the financial returns, and the way that those games are played, we will never get there. So I started Allelo essentially with this premise of, hey, we need to create the prerequisites for collaboration, cooperation, and cooperation can outcompete competition is what our main thesis is. So what are the prerequisites? And they're actually deeply social and cultural, supported by legal and technical. I think that one of the criticisms I have of the DAO space is that they only focused on technical and completely missed the social and cultural aspects. And so with Lilo, what we're actually wanting to do is, be an accelerator, be a Y Combinator for network cooperatives, or what we call network adaptive organisms, NOWs. And the idea there is that it's really, I really love this clip that Primavera, and I just posted it on LinkedIn. I don't know if you saw it. I don't know if you know Primavera Filipa, but she had this amazing talk about how entanglement of these different organizations is ultimately what enables this long-term commitment to the collaboration. And I really believe that. And so I don't think that I think that any place, any game where financial motivation is the only motivation, this is it doesn't really work well unless it's a game played by sociopaths, ultimately. And sociopaths have a role to play in society for sure. But I think that to play a game that really respects human values and life values, we need to have entanglement that's more focused on other values and on the things that we really care about. And so, how can we create a situation where these different entrepreneurs come together around a common vision and actually something that none of them could solve by themselves, and so they must work together to actually solve it? And then how can we make it so that they have enough safety and trust to do that, have the right culture and social tools to be able to deal with conflict? You mentioned conflict with a partner. I see conflict as one of the best ways to create high functioning teams, but it does require to have a culture and a set of practices that are accepted by all parties involved in order to make those moments one that that enhances the relationship and creates stronger ties. And not everyone can do that. So out selecting the selection process of the people that can do that and that are able to have that higher level of consciousness or skill level, or are willing to actually learn that is part of that whole process as well. And so with the Lilo, I think you've seen the document. We're looking at a couple of different ecosystems, digital sovereignty being the baseline, kind of the soil of that, cooperation then, or coordination being the second one built on top of that, with enabling many games, and then really the consciousness or education part, human health and well-being, and the regeneration part that build on top of that. But the approach is to really go strategic. So kind of the venture studio model, but rather than venture studio model on a single entity, in a single startup. That's the word I was looking for. Sorry, it's very late here. So go for this have an opinion of what is a strategic formation of this network adaptive organism can be, and which players can and should go in to form that. With the idea that we're not going to invest in single entities like startups. We're going to invest in the relationship between the startups. But we do that by investing in the thing as a whole. And that's really important because ultimately our idea is that this is all about a mindset change. So we need people to go from individualists to people that hold into being as their mindset or within their consciousness. And so and so then if and that's what I meant with kind of these places of the diamond and how we can play that game, because I believe that we can play a funding allocation or ultimately revenue education allocation game within this that has transparency, that is very much based on collaboration between these actors, that creates a completely different asset class for the investors, and so actually really takes down the risk while enabling lower returns, creating a game that's mostly focused on non-financial metrics, which is ultimately, I think, the game that they want to play, because it enables cooperation between the investors. Because the thesis is that actually putting in more money in some of these areas will see an exponential growth in the impact metric, and so the average impact per dollar or per investor will grow, and so they have an incentive to actually invite others in. While we're also in a world where ultimately maintaining our capital over time is going to be harder and harder in a world that's collapsing. And so the places where this is actually not true is the places that are resilient, right? That are anti-fragile. And guess what? If you focus on these metrics, you'll be investing in those places. So I think that there's a real motivation for investors, both financially from a risk perspective and accepting lower returns, but having a different game. So I'm not being fully coherent here, but I think you get it. Yeah. So yeah. Mm-hmm.
Maybe what is your because you say we, so do you have created like a small team around it? What is your what is your intention with this in the short term, the medium term?
Yeah, we're a small team, and so we're I don't know. Do you know? We're following essentially the Hire model. I don't know if you know Hire. It's one of those companies. I don't know. Do you know Reinventing Organizations? This book from 2012. Now, there are many companies listed. So when I started, this book wasn't out yet. I think it was 12 or no, it was 17, I think. Anyway, when I started, the book wasn't yet out or not yet popular, and so I spent a couple of years with researchers looking at all the different organizations in the world, because I had the question of how can we scale these democratic organizations. Haier was one of them. They're a Chinese company, Haier. They make appliances. They're about 80,000 people. They own GE appliances in the US. And they have evolved their model over 40 or 50 years. Very, very interesting. And so we've seen this model in different forms around the world as well, like Buurtzorg in the Netherlands. There are these Italian leagues of cooperatives, and a couple of others, Dragon. And so we selected a few service providers that work across these ecosystems. And we've been collecting the first 3 cohorts. So one in digital sovereignty, one in coordination, and one in regeneration. And within these cohorts, within these ecosystems, we have one cohort for which represents one now generation. So we're quite far with each 3, but the digital sovereignty one is furthest. And we're now developing essentially kind of the 3 month arc process of doing the now genesis, as we call it, which is very similar to Y Combinator, 3 month period in which they have these startups go through and then get funded. So that's similar, where we bring them together, but instead of creating many different startups, we're just aiming to create one now, maybe two. You never know. But really, the aim is to create one now, get that funded as part of the cohort. We'll do one first as an experiment, then to ultimately we can probably do a couple at the same time. And
so what's
yeah,
sorry,
yeah.
So each startup is an ecosystem, or
No,
it's a solution?
no, the way so we use the term ecosystem as a logical grouping of these nows, right? But of these areas and the logic is that within that grouping, we can find similar non-financial impact metrics that can be moved, so that we can actually create a fund per ecosystem that focuses on moving the needle on these specific non-financial metrics. And so digital sovereignty is one of those ecosystems. Coordination is another one, regeneration, health and well-being. So those are areas where we feel we can really move the needle on similar metrics across different nows. So now is a network adaptive organism. It's a network cooperative. You could use a different name. Within a now, there are different startups. These startups are, we aim to create high entanglement. Now, a startup can be part of multiple nows, but within a now, they're highly entangled. And funding goes towards a common solution. So they all work together to work towards one solution for one target group, with one revenue stream that gets distributed across them. And so you have a startup is part of it now, and now is part of an ecosystem, and then there's the ecosystem of ecosystem funds, in which hopefully that one we can work together with all other funds that are doing it now, like Futura and many others, to just all kind of somehow find a way to manage this ecosystem of ecosystem funds together. And we all have insights in our little areas or purviews of where we want to operate, and there within those ecosystems we might it's a fractal, but we'll yeah. So that's our view or our model.
Okay, nice. And so, but I think what you just described is like we also with Futura and all the others, with Susan, we are actually kind of trying to gather people on this ecosystem fund of ecosystem.
Exactly.
And so would you be interested in joining and participating, stewarding kind of this type of ecosystem fund?
Definitely, yeah. So I've been talking with Rory about, Rory Twos?
Rory too? No, I don't think so.
Okay, yeah. So he's been working with Gian Andrea on this model. Wait, let me just send you his document, which is relevant and interesting.
Yes, but I think they are going to introduce me to him.
Yeah, yeah. I'm sure they will. Here, this is his guide that he recently wrote. And so it just doesn't make sense to have more than one ecosystem of ecosystem fund if we're truly collaborating, right? If we're truly so I think that the thesis is that everyone that's open to cooperating or collaborating um, should collaborate, such that becomes an entity that cannot be beaten, because everyone that chooses not to cooperate or collaborate, they will be separate. And so there's this very nice picture in Primavera's presentation as well about a fish consisting of the smaller fish, but it's a bigger fish in any case. So I think that we're not all gonna agree, but that is fine as long as we can be smart enough, wise enough to, this is previous presentation, to say, okay, we'll get over our small differences, and we have enough ways to really have our uniqueness on the leaves, right, or somewhere in the tree, but further down. But the trunk is the ecosystem fund, let's say, and we we're just all collaborating, and we have a nice way that we can appreciate and enable our uniqueness while still all being in that, because hey, ultimately we're all seeing this picture of systemic way of looking at things, and which is very opposed to the extractive model, right? That is the extractive model, not not the small differences between however we see the world.
Yeah, I agree. I agree a lot on this idea of we need to keep the diversity of opinion and the way each of us have kind of want to contribute, or the spirit of each element. What I see, but I think the point I'm kind of following is the fact that, and that's maybe in the deck, I don't know if you have seen, but I started from the statement that I sent it on the WhatsApp group, I think the doc.
Could you resend it here?
Yeah.
If it's
I
easy.
will send it,
Wait, now I have it. The future of global collaboration. That one, right?
yeah. And
Yeah.
actually, I can present it to you, but basically the idea, I mean, the statement that started all of this is the fact that I've been with also Suzanne and many others in many groups, with Futura, with all these people, many groups of let's collaborate, let's create something, let's build the ecosystem together, and so on. And what I've seen most of the time is people are sharing what they do. People are inviting others in what they do. You should join us. We are a bit more advanced than you on this part. Maybe you can contribute in our vision. But most of the time, there is no collaboration existing or creating. And so, and most of the time, the conversation are even sterile, sorry, and not moving really further, because everyone is presenting what they are doing. People are just saying, okay, philosophically, it's super nice. Yeah, I totally agree, and so on and so on. But then nothing come out of it, even when people are saying, okay, the objective of this call is to find areas where we could collaborate, and nobody find. So I find that it's weird that even the people who are the most convinced we need to collaborate are not able to collaborate. And so that's where I was thinking, okay, how we can enable this, or like, I find that by creating this ecosystem fund, we could, by mutualizing the interest of all these community fund builder, or like ecosystem builders, we will actually create a safer space for people to say, okay, I have interest in your growth, and we have directly mutual interest. And so now it's more interesting for us to not do it on our side and really collaborate. And maybe it will take time. And so maybe there will be a big transition of, okay, we mutualize, and immediately the day after, we will not see where, but we have committed to collaborate in a way. This mutualization kind of show the commitment of each founder or each ecosystem to interconnect.
Yeah. So it's there's these other ideas of staking to be part of it. So if you really say yes, then you stake something, which is a little bit similar. But then ultimately, still the question is, okay, but what are we doing, right? And I think that right now what I'm seeing is there is the willingness to collaborate, but what is lacking is the life force energy, as I call it, also known as money, to flow through these systems. And so what we need, I think, is one, money, two, focus, and three, something that then really binds us together. And I think that we kind of lack all three. And so yeah, that is just having us have a lot of conversations, but not actually doing much. I think it's great to have this community fund, but what we need then is put money in it for it to actually run. But right now, if we would create a fund, even if we do it tomorrow, and we put in a couple of million, that money is going to be wasted. It's just going to be sunken very quickly. It's even if we could get the money, right, which we can't. And so the strategy that we're taking is kind of building up towards that. So okay, so how should we spend this money? Well, we should spend this money on strategic solutions. So let's prove how we can do that on with which one, the thing that everyone needs, right? Which is this digital sovereignty layer and the coordination layer. It's those two things. Some people say the consciousness thing as well, but we need this base layer that every future now is going to need. So we first do the one, we run that process, and we can get some, a little bit money, like $500,000 or something like that, to put in, and we can prove that this model works. Okay, then we might do a second one. Then we can go raise a fund for an ecosystem. Then we can raise a fund for the ecosystem of ecosystems. And now, okay, how's that money going to be used? Well, it's going to be used to actually create more of these nows that actually have this different way of dealing with risk. That's the game that at least we're doing, which might not be everyone's game. But like if I'm thinking about investing money into, if I put my investor hat on, right, would I put money into future as funds? Like I don't know you well enough to evaluate, but I wouldn't, right? There's no track record for investing. Entrepreneurial track record is relatively thin. The current solutions that they have, do not have the right proof points and so on. It's not a very interesting investable object right now. And I think that this is the problem across the whole systemic investing space. Like everyone knows that this is coming. It's kind of like AI. When I started with this fundraising around, what's now LLMs and everything in 2019, everyone knew, yeah, I know it's coming. It's sci-fi, but when, we don't know. I was like, well, it's going to happen soon, but and we're in the same thing. It's like it's going to happen soon. But I think I learned from that and bootstrap, make it happen, show that it can work, and then get the money flows started. Anyway, I'm being very long here, but that's because we need the money, we need to focus, right, and we need a reason to collaborate, and those need to be strategic.
And so your vision is more like to focus on one element and then build it from ground up, kind of one ecosystem, fund this ecosystem, and then think of maybe funding the ecosystem of ecosystem.
Yeah. So not even funding. So for me, an ecosystem is like a forest, right? So first, let's fund one tree right?
Yeah.
Which is a now essentially, right? Which is consisting of many branches, which are these startups. And once we have one now within an ecosystem, then we can start creating more of them, and then we can go into different ecosystems, and then we can look at the ecosystem of ecosystems. And this also really relates to the way that we're thinking about how the money should flow, because unlike VC, where we're going to put in like a lot of money into one thing and then just wait 8 years and hopefully we're going to get 100x back. Um, yeah, of course, this is not exactly how it works, but you know what I mean. This is more about, okay, how can we actually create a much faster and shorter feedback loop with the people that are doing things, where we stream money more using capital allocation, such as, well, ultimately, quadratic investing, I think is very interesting. But before that, bounties, request for proposal, or even retroactive public goods funding, right? These are methods that really put a lot of the risk on the people that are executing. But because they're executing, they can also really take that risk because they know what they're doing. And so there's that.
What are the three things that you mentioned? Retroactive.
Well, I mentioned four. Quadratic investing, but potentially you first need a community. So that one is a little bit later. Then I talked about bounties, right? So think X prize. Then there's request for proposal, and then there's retroactive public goods funding. I'm going to send you a book on this, which is amazing. Let's see, green pill. Yeah. This one, it gives you, you can read it in a day, and you'll be fully educated on capital allocation methods. I'm just highlighting the ones that I'm a big fan of. But I'm a big fan of many others, but these specifically, I think, show that how you can do capital allocation in a way where you really reduce the risk for investors, right? So you move the risk to those people that actually have the knowledge and are capable to really judge the risk. And then but they have the certainty of getting paid, right? So the money can go into escrow, and when they achieve it, they get paid. And so they can then get the freedom to actually perform this, and by paying them not just in a fixed amount from the funds, but also giving them a variable part, a rev share in the ultimate outcome, in the ultimate revenue. Their biggest upside is in the future, right? And so they get their cost met now, but they get the biggest upside in actually getting the thing over the goal line as a whole. And so that will be their ultimate goal. It just means that you should never overpay them for doing the thing. It should just match cost. And that's just a very interesting. This is so one of the things that we learned from Hire on how to have that game dynamic there. I think that can really solidify. Because then you also don't need to do a lot of the collaboration or coordination overhead between the organizations can go away with that, and you can do a lot of decision making actually asynchronous, because the meeting overhead is usually killing for these type of organizations. Yeah. And there's this organization that has some of that built in. They're called Access Impact, and where you can really go on a task or subtask level in a project or sub-project and fund those things if you want to. So you can really create a game where, obviously, if you're investing, as a family office, you're doing it maybe at a fund, right? Who then finds a specialist who can do it within an ecosystem, who finds a specialist who can do it within the now. Within the now, there's a project manager, whatever, who will allocate some of the funds to the bounties and whatnot of the different tasks and projects. So you have a tree there of knowledge and know-how, and everyone has their interest in that success. Yeah. Anyway, but that's also then how we can work together, right? Because now we can launch this now as a Lilo being kind of like the Y Combinator, but then anyone else can invest in this now. So you with your fund, you can say, oh, well, actually, digital sovereignty is so important to us, we want to have certain features, and we're going to actually fund those specific things in there, right? Because it's all transparent. To say we want to move the needle on this specific, a non-financial metric, and we can see that these features would do that, and so we're going to fund those things.
Yeah, that's super interesting, and I think that was part of the kind of one of the next step we identify on. It's good to say we can't invite investors if we don't have defined, and we can't bring people to together to fundraise jointly if we don't know what will be the rules of the fund allocation in a way. And because a lot of them are expecting, okay, I'm okay to join and then fundraise jointly if I know I will have a piece of what I want to build funded. And so I think what you mentioned here is like, yeah, it's maybe very interesting way of actually creating system for allocation of fund instead of just fixed rules, or instead of having just role of, okay, those person will decide. And so I think this is even more fluid, even more dynamic, which is super interesting. Yeah, probably solving one of the big challenge. Yeah.
Yeah, I think so. Yeah.
Okay, but I would love to, I mean, dive a bit more into the book that you sent and so on, and happy to, um, yeah, happy to get on another call and explore more like what, yeah, I mean, yeah, how we could like not
Collaborate.
collaborate. I mean, it was just like how we can collaborate, but more like on this vision of yeah, what are the things we need to unlock before thinking of creating this ecosystem fund or something like this.
Yeah, yeah.
And I think one element that maybe answer one of the challenge you identify was, yeah, today nobody will put money in if you don't know how it will be allocated and what is the track record and so on and so on. And so that's where I feel that if we first invest shares and create an initial portfolio, then we show investors you invest in this portfolio already, and you want this portfolio to be bigger with more companies, or those companies to be bigger, then you can put money, but that actually back the first investment of the investors.
Yeah, yeah. I think that there's something there. I like that idea to some extent. And yeah, I want to think a little bit. So I'll take that as my homework to think a little bit more about that. Also within these nows as we've selected the organizations, because in part this is really about playing a different game. So we will actually our rule is if you're taking VC money, you cannot play with us. Right? That's just you're out. There's some other things as well where we out-select people based on their ability to collaborate and kind of overcome certain things more socially and like internal. But yeah, so but that also means that a lot of them have found different ways to fund, and that also means that there's no clear valuation. It also means that we're really pushing everyone to have a steward-owned organization, which means that valuation is also non-standard or really, very atypical, which also makes it hard to translate to investors. Also means that they might not even have shares; they might have tokens or nothing, right? Just membership. So it's not as straightforward, right? If they don't have a security necessarily attached to the value that they've created, it becomes harder to play that game as well. But let me think a little bit about that.
And I can send you another doc that we've been kind of writing with Suzanne on more kind of the proposal or the initial proposal to founding members For sure, there is maybe a lot of things you would like to comment and stuff, and I'm happy to have your comments. But basically, it could be a first framework of how we could think of that. But I definitely see the fund allocation being something we need to add. And I like your, I think I haven't said it this way, but I like the way you say it on selecting the people based on their capacity to overcome certain challenges, like human challenges. And I think this is the key element on the, I mean, one of the key elements in the selection process, because it's people with selecting people with this process and selecting the first organization with a more due diligence framework or valuation framework that is a bit different.
Yeah. Great. Okay, so that's great. Yeah, please send it to me. Is that something the document you can send to me now, or will you send it to me later?
I can send it to you now.
Okay, perfect.
I will do on your email. I will invite you to Google Doc here.
Okay. Yeah, email is my least used.
You want me to drop the link?
Either here or in one of the chats.
Yeah.
Chat, yeah, that would be really helpful. Thank you.
Okay.
And I'll share this recording. I'll probably put it into the Coherence funding channel. Yeah. And I did started. I started a group on WhatsApp with Victor and Rory, Gian Andrea, and Nico, who's also working on something like this. Maybe if you send me your email, I can add you to that group as well.
Yeah. So let me drop my email here, and I will drop the link also.
Perfect. Yeah.
And the link, it's loading. Your address is Ruben. Okay, I have it on the WhatsApp. Okay.
Is it secret or you? I always just do like open to everyone, but
Yes. Yeah, I could. No, I have. It's not. It's private, but just to have an idea of who is actually. But I could.
okay.
I could.
Okay, yeah. I requested access now. I think maybe there was a typo in my email. I don't know. Yeah, because I usually put these like in the Slack to, you know, in the Slack of Lilo, and then my colleagues all cannot read the document.
Okay.
Yeah. Okay. Perfect.
I think you have access now.
Yeah.
I will discuss this with Susan first before I'm opening it, because it's not only my work but also hers. So yeah.
Absolutely. Great. No, I'll make sure to read this, and then I look forward to chat again soon. And next week I'll be at a retreat, but then the week after I'm very available. So
Okay.
happy to chat then again.
Do you want to schedule a time already for next? No, we can chat on WhatsApp and arrange a call now.
Yeah. Let's just chat on WhatsApp. When we feel ready, we can do that. Yeah.
Okay, sounds good.
Perfect.
Thank you.
Thank you. Nice to meet you.
Great to meet you. Yes. Have a good night.
Thanks. Have a great day. Bye.